Hey everyone, Nagrand here and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're gonna rank down 7 of the rarest mounts in World of Warcraft. This list doesn't include mounts that are no longer available or those exclusively found on the black market auction house. Instead, all of these can still be farmed at any time, well okay, except for one, which is tied to a specific time window, but there is not a universe I wouldn't include that particular mount in my rarest mounts list, so yeah, we will have one exception. Also, disclaimer, all of these mounts on my list have been around for more than 2 years, which gave players enough time to go and get them, and yet they are still considered a rare sight. With that said, let's dive into the 7 rarest mounts in WoW right now, according, well, to me, and of course the data obtained from the Mount Journal Enhanced add-on. It's quite similar to Wowhead, but it may have a few differences here and there. Who's more accurate? I don't know, but for the fun of it, we'll stick with the add-ons info, which seems pretty spot on in most cases. Alright, starting us off at number 7 is the all-time classic, the Timeless Proto-Drake. I couldn't possibly make a list of rare mounts without including this rare beauty. One of the most coveted dragons in game, it has been around since Wrath of the Lich King, and owning this mount is a badge of prestige, with only 8% of the player base currently having it in their collection. Now, while that might not sound incredibly rare, after all, you do see it here and there, consider this. This mount has been obtainable since 2008. For reference, I was 11 back then. So yeah, the Timeless Proto-Drake is undoubtedly one of the most desired mounts in WoW for the longest time, with countless guides and tips dedicated to farming it. I also have a dedicated guide on my channel where I share my personal experience and tips for getting this mount, so yeah, if you're interested in getting the Timeless Proto-Drake, you can go and check that. And if you've somehow never heard of it, whether you have been living under a rock or you are new to the game, and well, in that case, welcome to WoW and kudos to you for diving in. Jokes aside, this mount is almost a guaranteed drop from the NPC Timeless Proto-Drake, which does look exactly like the mount itself. And yeah, actually I did say almost because according to Wowhead, it has a 98.86% drop rate. So yeah, believe it or not, there are a few unlucky souls out there who tagged and killed the Drake but never got the mount. One of those unlucky folks happens to be my fiancé, who apparently killed it with 2 others, and guess what? The other 2 actually got the mount, but he never did. Oof, talk about bad luck. But anyway, that's the worst case scenario. Most of the time, if you manage to find and kill the TLPD, you will get the mount. The real challenge, of course, lies in finding the NPC in the first place. The TLPD spawns in Storm Peaks in Northrend with 4 possible spawn locations. But here's the catch, it shares a spawn timer with Viragosa, another rare. They share the same spawn points and flight paths, but Viragosa is far more likely to appear. And to talk about, the time loss has only about a 10% chance to spawn instead of Viragosa. In other words, the time loss is actually a rare spawn of a rare spawn. And if that wasn't enough, its spawn timer ranges from 2 to 8 hours. If you kill either TLPD or Viragosa, the cycle takes at least 2 hours to reset, and combine that with server facing and inactive shards, and you've got yourself a recipe for an RNG salad layered with even more RNG dressing. But don't let that discourage you, plenty of players have managed to get this mount, myself included, and it's a bit easier now thanks to all the tools that we have at our disposal. Add-ons and detailed informations can definitely help, though it won't change the fact that farming this Proto-Drake will eat up a lot of your time. After all, it is named Timeless Proto-Drake, and yeah, that actually makes sense. Fun fact, I managed to get the Timeless Proto-Drake while queuing up for the Love is in the Air event, when I was actually farming for the number 6 mount of today's list, which yeah, kinda spoiled at this point, and it's none other than the X45 Heartbreaker. If you've been following me for at least a year, you probably know that the formerly known Love Rocket is one of the oldest mounts that I've been trying to get for as long as I can remember. With only 6% of the player base owning this mount, it's the rarest drop from any holiday event in the game. This elusive mount has a slim chance to drop from the heart-shaped box in Shadowfang Keep during the Love is in the Air event. According to Wowhead, it has a 0.07% drop rate, though some sources argue that it's even lower than that and is something closer to 0.03. Either way, it's by far the lowest mount drop rate from any holiday event. The incredible low drop rate and the fact that it only drops during the Love is in the Air event, which runs for just 2 weeks each year, makes everything more frustrating. Like, compare this to the mounts from other events like the Headless Horseman or the Brufes Kodo Ram, which have significantly higher drop rates and are owned by around 30% of the player base. Meanwhile, the Love Rocket remains stuck at just 6%. Even Blizzard acknowledged how frustrating this is, so in 2023 they introduced a buff for the first attempt of the day during the event. Based on Wowhead data and community feedback, the drop rate on your first attempt each day is around 1%, a considerable improvement over the original rate. However, any subsequent attempts revert to the abysmally low drop rate. With only a 2-week window to farm it each year, combined with its annoyingly small chance to drop, the X45 Heartbreaker truly earned its name as one of the most infuriating mounts to obtain in World of Warcraft. Next up at number 5 is a ground mount that comes from archaeology and is the Ultramarine Kirajin Battle Tank. This rare mount is only obtained by 6% of the player base, and the item that unlocks it, the Scepter of Ashakir, is arguably one of the most coveted artifacts found in archaeology for any mount collector. While you can say the Vial of the Suns recipe is also highly sought after, at least the Sunstone can be purchased from the auction house. But we cannot say the same for the Ultramarine, which is only attainable through the grind of archaeology. And we all know how fun that is. The TLDR is that this mount comes from solving Tol'vir fragments. There are 6 rare Tol'vir artifacts in total, and once you complete one, luckily it won't show up again, so as long as you keep solving Tol'vir fragments, you will eventually get this mount. And keep in mind that the Tol'vir fragments needed for this mount are exclusively farmed through dig sites found in Uldum. Back in the Cataclysm era, the only way to obtain it was by flying all over Kalimdor, completing dig sites, and hoping that the next one would spawn in Uldum. Luckily, there is now a much faster method for farming Tol'vir fragments, and it involves utilizing Pandarian dig sites. Pandaland only features 3 types of dig sites: the Mogu, Mantid, and Pandaren. The real game changer, of course, is that if you are exalted with the Lore Walkers, you can purchase an item from Bran that converts all Pandarian dig sites into Mantid for 24 hours. Mantid artifacts are incredibly easy to solve, and the dig sites are often clustered in Tauloc steps and the Dread Wastes, allowing you to cycle through them quickly. So here's how it works. Each time that you solve a fragment in Pandaria, you can create a restored artifact and trade that for a crate of Tol'vir fragments. You can do that from Brand Bronzebeard at the Seat of the Knowledge in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. You can speed up this process even further by buying keystones from the auction house to complete solves faster. Obviously, this method is a lot easier compared to flying all around Kalimdor and praying for an Uldum dig site to appear. And as an extra tip, you can get Forger's Gloves, which make the serving process in Pandaria so much faster. They drop from Burning Berserkers found in the Timeless Isle, and they'll speed up the process quite a lot. And while this method makes the grind more tolerable, archaeology remains a profession that is both heavily grindy and RNG based. Even if you find a way to solve Tol'vir puzzles easier, you still don't know what the outcome will be. Tol'vir fragments can lead to many common artifacts, and this mount comes as a result from one of the rare ones. Alright, 4 mounts remain, and which one will claim the throne? Stick around to find out, but before we move on, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Most of you watching my videos aren't even subscribed yet, so please take a moment to hit that button. It's completely free and it will help me create more content like this. Alright, now let's get to number 4 on today's list. This one is one of my favorite ground mounts. It's unique, eye-catching, and is none other than the Voidtalon of the Dark Star. I mean, how can a mount with that name not be as rare as this is? This beautiful mount hails from Draenor, and for something that's been around since 2015, it remains surprisingly rare. While the model itself isn't unique, there are two other mounts with different color variations. This purple talon bird is the rarest of the trio, with only 5% of the player base owning it. So how do you get your hands on it? Well, I'm very glad you asked. The Voidtalon is obtained by finding and clicking on a rare purple portal called Edge of Reality. The challenging part obviously is locating the portal itself, as it spawns at 28 confirmed locations scattered across the 4 leveling zones in Draenor. Once you find the portal and click on it, you'll be queued up for a special scenario. Accepting the queue teleports you to an instance version of the Shadowmoon burial grounds. Inside the scenario, you will find an egg, just click on it and voila, you've got your mount. As you can tell, the key in obtaining this mount lies in finding the portal itself, and while there is no straightforward and simple respawn timer for it, we do have some general guidelines. First of all, the Edge of Reality cannot spawn until at least 48 hours after a server reset. For EU players, this essentially means Friday, and for NA players, that means Thursday. That's when you should start searching for the portal. It's also really crucial to know that each zone has its very own portal with its very own spawn timer. This is different to when it was first released back in Worlds of Draenor. In other words, multiple portals can be up in different zones on the same realm, but only one portal per zone. This is why I recommend focusing on a single zone instead of flying across all Draenor. Having alts parked in different zones, even on the same realm, could definitely help. Once spawned, the portal stays up for around 15 minutes, and if no one clicks it, it despawns, and it will not appear for at least 2 to 8 hours in that zone. If someone claims it, it takes a minimum of 8 hours for another portal to spawn in that zone. Also, another tricky part is that only one person can obtain the mount from each portal, so you are basically competing against others. Any character can see and claim the portal regardless of level or quest progress, and yes, even class trial characters. To increase your chances, you can create characters on role-playing realms, as these are immune to sharding and they tend to have lower populations. You should be strategic though. Some RP realms are connected, so avoid making characters on connected realms, unless you do want them on different shards. In total, there are 4 different shards that you can use. We have War Mode On and War Mode Off, then we have Chromie Time combined with War Mode On and War Mode Off. Having said that, don't expect to be completely alone in RP realms. As time goes on, more and more mount farmers are turning to these realms in pursuit of the rarest mounts. However, if you do visit during early morning hours, you will often find these realms to be quieter, and especially if you opt for a non-English realm. If you'd like to see a more in-depth guide, please let me know in the comments so I can make an entire video on it sharing all of my tips and tricks. But for now, let's move on to the next mount. Coming in at number 3, we have a particularly elusive mount that feels like I've been chasing forever. And I'm talking about the Grey Riding Camel. With an acquisition rate of just 4.5%, this mount is incredibly rare, especially considering that it's been obtainable since Cataclysm, which, if you remember, it launched back in 2010, over 15 years ago. To earn this mount, you'll need to scour Uldum in search of a mysterious camel figurine. However, these figurines only spawn in the original cataphase of Uldum, so you'll need to visit Zidormi in Ramhagen to shift the zone back to its pre-BFA state. This figurine can spawn in one of 50 potential locations across the zone, but the real challenge lies in finding the real one. Yeah, that's right, there are 2 types of camel figurines, the most common fake one and the rare real one. There is only a 5% chance that it'll be the real figurine, and the other 95% of the time you'll find a fake figurine instead. Though identical in appearance, the real and fake figurines have different NPC IDs. And also, if you are planning to farm these, I highly recommend downloading this add-on, the Camel Spotter. Figurines share a 2 to 8 hour spawn timer, and only one, real or fake, can exist per War Mode shard at any given time. If you click on a fake one, you'll get a trash item and it will despawn in a few minutes, resetting the spawn timer. This means that you can expect another spawn 2 to 8 hours later. However, if you find a real figurine, clicking it will teleport you to an instance Face of Ferelas. There you'll need to defeat and loot Dormus, who will drop the Grey Riding Camel mount along with a Feats of Strength achievement and the title of the Camel Hoarder. While it's obviously a pain to track down fake figurines, it can still work in your favor by narrowing down the spawn timer for the next one. Keep doing so will ultimately bring you closer to your final goal, finding the real figurine and eventually the mount. Only one person can loot the mount from the figurine, and it seems class trials can loot it as well, though I prefer spreading real characters on low populated RP realms, and even in that case it's still quite a challenge to spot a figurine on peak hours. And actually this is my second recording for this segment. The first time I was talking about how I'll find around 20 figurines and all of them turn out to be fake, but then during my latest stream the unbelievable happened. I found a real figurine, and that's the camel. That was really lucky, but also meant that I had to redo this part again, but hey, I'm not complaining at all. I also got it in Chromie time, so it's absolutely doable there, but it's still a bit of a hard mode, if you will. On the present timeline instead, Dormus is just one shot, which makes everything less stressful. For me, on my level 52 tank Demon Hunter, it took about a minute to take him down, also considering that my bars were all over the place, but the fight was really easy. The fact that finding a figurine is already a pain, let alone finding a real one, makes the Grey Riding Camel one of the hardest mounts to obtain to this day. And yeah, we can safely say it definitely deserves the bronze medal in this particular list. Okay, moving up the ladder to number 2, we have a mount from Nagrand, and if you did any mount farming in BFA, I think you probably know which one I'm talking about. Yeah, it's the Silent Glider mount, which has around 2% acquisition rate. This beautiful mana ray has an incredibly low drop chance from the rare mob Soundless. Soundless can be found floating above large coral reefs near the Horde base with 7 potential spawn points. To track this elusive rare, I recommend using Silver Dragon or any other rare tracking add-on. Now here's when things get tricky. The spawn timer for Soundless is really long, ranging from 2 to 8 hours, and the worst part, the mount has less than 1% chance to drop. So not only is it tough to find and defeat Soundless, but actually getting the mount feels like winning the lottery. While Nagrand isn't as crowded as it used to be, it's still a challenge to spot this rare NPC. From my own experience and the feedback from others who commented on a guide I made a while ago, it's still quite the hunt. If you are committed to finding it though, one tip I have for you is to farm it on a low populated RP realm. This will definitely increase your chances of encountering Soundless, but even then, with all of this competition, finding this rare can feel like a miracle. And let's not forget about inactive sharding. If you are unfamiliar with the term, basically if no one enters a zone for a while, then that shard will completely shut down, which resets the timer. This essentially means that Soundless won't spawn for at least 2 hours after someone re-enters and activates the zone. So if you want to farm this mount on low populated realms, you have to keep the zone alive. Otherwise, you will never see Soundless. Technically, you can boost your odds by using alts to farm it daily, but ironically, who has the time to calm a rare for hours on end? Maybe only people who work from home stand a chance at getting this rare mount. With its long spawn timer and incredibly low drop rate, these factors alone make Soundless one of the most frustrating mounts to farm up until this day. That's why it totally deserves the second spot. And finally, mount number 1, the king of our list. This is a mount that me and many others are still struggling to get to this day. I'm talking about the lovely Farbird from Worlds of Draenor, the Solar Sparhawk. This mount drops from Rukmar, a world boss found in Spires of Arak, and according to estimates, it's only been obtained by the tiniest fraction of the player base. The Mount Journal add-on estimates around 2 to 3%, while Wowhead claims it might even be as low as 1%. Either way, it's an incredibly rare sight, especially considering that it's been around since 2014. Blizzard, in an attempt to make it a bit more bearable, even buffed the drop rate back in 2022, trying to help players to get their hands on it. But even with that buff, it remains one of the hardest world boss mounts to obtain. The funny thing, it's not even difficult to farm. You just fly over to Rookmar's spawn point, wait for it to appear, and you're good to go. The spawn timer is super short as well, only 15 minutes, so you can easily rotate through alts to increase your chances. Even in the worst case scenario where you miss Rookmar, it's just a quick 15 minutes wait for the next spawn. If you are a vivid mount collector, this is literally nothing compared to rares with long, frustrating spawn timers. Basically, almost every other mount on this list. Like seriously, take a step back and think about it. It's pretty wild that this mount, which spawns on a predictable timer and can technically be farmed weekly with as many alts as you want, is still so ridiculously hard to get. No crazy spawn timers or convoluted steps, just fly over, wait for the spawn and kill it. And yet only a tiny portion of the player base actually has it. Compare this to the Pandaria World Boss mounts that also saw their drop rates buffed. Those mounts of course got the treatment of remix, and so plenty of players, myself included, finally managed to get them through that. But when it comes to the Solar Sparhawk, no such luck. Perhaps what we really need is a Draenor remix to give us a decent shot at this mount. But with the Legion remix already on the horizon for 2025, who knows if Draenor will ever get such treatment. Let's be honest, Draenor isn't exactly the most beloved expansion, so it wouldn't be surprising if it never sees the light of day. I really struggle with deciding between the second and first spots as they could easily switch places, but here's my reasoning. The Najadar patch came out in 2019, while Rookmar has been around since the launch of Draenor in 2014. That's a 5-year difference, yet both mounts have a very similar acquisition rate. And honestly, if Blizzard hadn't buffed the drop rates back in 2022, I think the Sparhawk's number will be even lower. This is ultimately why I chose the Solar Sparhawk to take the top spot as the rarest mount on this list. Obviously, there are so many rare mounts out there, and this list is just a mere reflection of some of them. And yeah, what do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Do you have some of these mounts or even all of them? Let me know in the comments, and while you're at it, tell me one rare mount that you are still chasing to this day. If we can try and get this video to 500 likes, I can work on another list featuring even more of the rarest and hardest mounts to obtain in WoW. As always, thank you so much for sticking around until the end. Don't forget to subscribe for more WoW coverage and hit the bell to stay up to date. Good luck with whatever you're doing, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!